everyone, and welcome. Welcome to the Coleman Insights Ask Me Anything webinar series, where we will answer your questions related to research, branding, and marketing strategy in audio entertainment. My name is Kimberly Bryant, and I am the Coleman Insights Director of Client Services. And here with me are consultants Nachlis and Meghan Campbell. On today's AMA episode, we will be discussing qualitative research. We received a few questions on your registration forms that we will be answering today. However, if you have any additional questions, please feel free to use that chat feature, and we will try and address those at the end. All right, let's jump right into today's topic. Jay, can you tell us the difference between qualitative and quantitative research?
Yeah. So let's first talk about the different types of studies that a quantitative and a qualitative study would be. So a quantitative study, for example, is a market perceptual research, or market perceptual study, whereas qualitative research are things like focus groups, interviews, content testing. And one of the best ways to think about the difference between quantitative and qualitative is quantitative is the what. It's how you get at the big picture stuff. So if you want to find out how many people are listening, or what images you own, or what people think about the music, or what they think about your personalities, or what platforms they listen to you on, that's quantitative research. Qualitative research is the why. Why do they feel that way about the music? Why do they feel that way about the personalities? Why are they using that platform as opposed to another platform? Why don't they like new music as much as they used to? Why have your morning numbers plummeted? It's how you get at those questions. There are smaller sample sizes than quantitative research. And so those are the main differences. And that's what we're going to focus on today.
Yeah, that's great. All right, Meghan, can you tell us when you should use qualitative research versus when you should use quantitative research?
Yeah, it really depends on what your goals are. So like Jay said, quantitative studies are going to tell you the what. These are larger sample sizes. If you want to be able to project your results onto the population or a subset of the population, you're going to want to take that route. You're going to want to say, 30% of the people we talk to listen to this podcast. So 30% of the population listens to this podcast. But if you are trying to get to those whys, so why people feel and behave the way they do, that's when you're going to use a qualitative study. It really gets into those behaviors. So what's driving people to do the things they do and feel what they feel. And they can be very beneficial. We're going to go into some details of different types of things you can find out with qualitative research. But it really does just dig deep into an individual's decision-making. Why do they pick this station over another? Why are they attracted to this type of personality and not another? What are their turn-ons and turn-offs as far as entertainment and information topics? And we can do that somewhat through quantitative studies as far as like build the bones out. But to get to that really touchy-feely stuff, whys, emotions, things like that, that's all qualitative.
Yeah. All right, so Jay, bringing it back to you, what are the benefits of pairing qualitative and quantitative research, and is there an order you should do them in?
There's actually benefits of doing it both ways. So I'll give you some examples. I do think there's one that we prefer a little bit more, but there's really benefits of doing it both ways. So let's say, for example, you're doing a perceptual study like we talked about, so quantitative research. And you put out those questions, and then you find in the results of your study, for example, that maybe an abnormally high number of people that cume your station are cuming another station. And you want to figure out why that is. You might find some signs within the research to that, but you really want to probe that more. Or maybe you're doing evaluations of your personalities, And you've had these trended studies, right, where this personality has had this certain evaluation level and it's been consistent. And all of a sudden they spike one way or the other. It goes way up or it goes way down. And there's no obvious answer to why that happened. And so that's where you might go, well, now I'm going to do a qualitative study to find out why that spike happened. You know, was there something that that was obvious that comes up in a focus group where they say, well, yeah, this person connected with me in this way, or they did this during this particular major event in the station or whatever, right? You find that out in qualitative research. So that's one path. The other way to do it is qualitative to quantitative. And so when you're doing a quantitative project and we're preparing a perceptual study, we do something called an issues call, right? And the idea behind an issues call is that you all get together and you probe as many questions as you can that you want to cover in that study. So here are all the things I want to learn in this study. But the thing about an issues call is, you know, it's what you think you want to know, right? So the benefit of qualitative before quantitative is, and this will probably come up in one of our other answers, is one of the great things about qualitative research is you find out things you didn't expect to find out. And so you may do a qualitative study, and let's say you're talking about a personality on your station. Well, in that qualitative research, in that group, someone goes, hey, you know, I hate it when such and such talks about politics. And then someone else says, yeah, I hate that too. And then another person says it. So now you got like 3 or 4 people that have mentioned this. And you say, as the brand manager, huh, that's funny. I didn't even know that. I didn't realize that this person was talking about politics, but now it's come up. Now, is it isolated to a few people, or is this a bigger problem? So you don't want to make strategic decisions based on 3 or 4 people saying that this is a problem. So you put it in the quantitative research and you test it. And now with the bigger sample size, you can figure out, is this just an isolated issue with a few people, or is it a bigger problem?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you actually bring up focus groups and specifically. So Meghan, can you talk about the differences and the benefits of an online discussion group versus a traditional focus group?
Sure. Yeah. So much of the qualitative research has started moving online, and I know lots of different companies have lots of different options. And there's a lot of benefits to an online qualitative study. First of all, they're just a lot more flexible, and that is for participants, and it's also for the research companies that are conducting them. So participants are generally able to do these on their own time. If they're doing like our Campfire online discussion groups, they may be asked to do an interview at a specific time, but for the most part, throughout the duration of their group, they are able to log in when it makes most sense to them and answer their questions, do the activities that they've been assigned for that day. And so it can often be easier to recruit participants into online studies because there is that flexibility built in. They don't have to drive somewhere at a specific time. Our lives are all so crazy. Sometimes it's hard to say that on Thursday at 4 o'clock, I can be in the next town over to do a study about dog food for 2 hours. You know, that can be hard. So the flexibility for the participants, but for the research company as well, building on what Jay just said about qualitative research, bringing up themes or ideas or issues you had no idea you were facing until you hear it out of someone's mouth. That often happens in the first couple of days of one of our Campfire studies. And we're able to build in a whole nother line of questioning, create some activities around that idea so we can really dig in and see if it's a bigger problem. Is this just something that 4 people feel, or can we present that idea to the whole group and get 40 people to tell us how they feel about it, which would then inform our decisions on how we might approach that later on in quantitative work. So lots of flexibility built into that online platform or approach, but also, at least in the way we set up our studies, and this is probably a case in many, you hear individual responses first. So we oftentimes, if you've seen a focus group, there is someone in the room that has the loudest voice. They just have a dominant personality. They are not afraid to share their opinions. And oftentimes, without meaning to, they're influencing other people in the room. Either just someone who's less likely to share might decide to be quiet because they feel differently than this loud dominant person, so they might not participate. And so that's eliminated in the online environment. They're answering questions or doing activities on their own. So they're responding first before they see anybody else's comments. They still get exposed to that, but it's after they've answered the question themselves. So that's perfect. Or that's another big benefit. There's also the discussion aspect online, right? They still get that piece. They can still have a conversation and see what other people's ideas are. But again, first we hear exactly what they feel before they're influenced by anyone else. I still, though, feel that one of the biggest benefits of in-person groups is just better organic discussion. It is easier to react in the moment to a comment made by someone sitting across the table from you than it is when you're looking at an online, discussion, right? So a lot of times, we're all used to participating, at least most of us, on social networks and platforms where we are used to having discussions and commenting and reading other people's responses, but nothing beats in the moment responses. And there's other nuances that, you can pick up in a in-person group. Emotions and body language, that's a big part of how we communicate. And those things are harder to pick up in online studies.
Yeah, definitely. Well, kind of on the flip side of that coin, we have focus groups in the group atmosphere. Well, Jay, can you tell us what an IDI is?
IDI stands for in-depth interview. You might also hear these referred to as one-on-ones or one-to-ones. And actually, to piggyback on what Meghan just said, one of the great things about IDIs is that they're intimate. They are one person to one person. And so, sometimes in a focus group, it can be easy to get distracted. There's other, as she just said, there's other dominant voices that come in. When you do a one-on-one interview, an IDI, it is one person, probably Meghan or I, in our case, having a conversation with a consumer, with a listener, and we're asking them questions about the brand, and you have their full attention. And you can, a good interviewer will, just like in a focus group, will, be listening. You have to be a great listener, not just a great interviewer, you have to be a great listener, because you have to pay attention to when that conversation might potentially pivot. And they might say something that brings up another question, and then you can probe that deeper. So that happens in IDIs. So for example, there was a podcast client that we had that really wanted to learn more about perceptions of his brand. And so, for him, it was important to learn about the website and the functionality and the colors and the ease of use and customer service. So in those interviews, you can really have that conversation and say, well, have you ever contacted customer support? What was that like? Tell me about that conversation. Have you ever contacted anyone else's customer support? How did it differ? And so, that's, you can think about how that becomes one question, but you can go boom, 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 boom in a row and get really deep on it. That's the benefit of IDIs. They also tend to be a little more affordable. And they're a great, it's funny, in one respect, they're some of the most basic types of methodology of research we do, but they can be super effective.
Yeah. Real quick before we finish up, Meghan, can you tell us maybe some themes that we've seen from qualitative research in the past years?
Sure. We have, this year, we've conducted a number of our Campfire online discussion groups with a variety of music and spoken word radio stations. And in all of those studies, we've observed some lingering, longer-term behavioral and psychological impacts of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. People remain more inwardly focused than pre-pandemic. They're much more concerned about themselves. You hear self-care, you hear, work-life balance, where we might have been more outwardly focused on what other people were doing, and we still are. There's a lot more focus internally, my family, my feelings, looking out for my health. They're also more community-minded. There's more interest in hyper-local content. My world has shrunk, and so that continues to be a theme. Connection is also even more important than we've seen, and that we all went without it for some time. So feeling a part of something, and that can be just feeling like you're part of that special club of people that listen to this particular podcast or watch this particular TV show. You're feeling like part of the in crowd, or just hearing personalities that have great chemistry. So they truly sound like friends. I can't hang out with my friends, or I'm not seeing them like I used to, or talking to them like I used to, but I get that same warm, fuzzy vibe from hearing two personalities that have a great chemistry on a morning show. That continues to be a theme. Polarizing content continues to be a big turnoff. Politics, religion, gossip, divisive language. People are still looking for safe spaces from their entertainment and news sources. So those still continue to be a turnoff. We'll see if that changes with this election cycle. Who knows what's coming at us and how things will change. But also, there is a sense of a new normal. So, we were in a state of constant upheaval. Now everything seems to settle. People are moving back towards a more normal life pattern than they had before the pandemic began. And while there's some lingering fear and negativity, people are moving forward and are feeling a little bit more positive. Two other quick things. There is an increased call for diversity in personality or awareness that somebody might not be diverse or be like me. So we see this on music stations, we see this on news stations and spoken word. They are aware, they have in their mind who these people are, what they look like, what communities they come from, and they want to see some variety. Younger audiences, women tend to be a little more tuned into this than men. But this whole diversity and variety theme is also happening in regards to music and information and sources. So we hear a lot about music variety. We always have, but this seems to be something that comes up over and over again, either increased variety, different types of variety, and people wanting to hear different perspectives. So they're wanting to hear a variety of different voices when they're hearing information and news topics.
Yeah, I definitely see all that as well. Well, I know we had a few more questions, but that is all the time we have today. And if we did not get to your question, please feel free to reach out to Jay or Meghan directly. If you take a look in their chat, I have posted their email addresses, jnachlis@colemaninsights.com and Meghan Campbell at colemaninsights.com. But thank you all so much. Thank you, Jay and Meghan, for joining us today. Please keep an eye on our website and our social media for information on our next AMA episode. And if you aren't already, go ahead and subscribe to our Tuesdays with Coleman blog on our website. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.